Come on, all over the building. Anybody love Jesus? Make some noise. Come on. I can't hear y'all in the balcony. Make some noise. Come on, choir right here. Come down, Almighty. Come down, Almighty. Help us our name. Help us our name. Come down, Almighty. Come down, Almighty. Help us our name. Help us our name. Come on, here we go. We come to pray. We come to pray. We come to pray. Thy name. Come on, soprano. Come down, Almighty. Where all my sopranos at? Come down, Almighty. Help us our name. Come on, alto. Come down, Almighty. Oh, 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 oh. Come down, Almighty. Help us our name. Come on, tenor. Come down, Almighty. Help us our name. Come down, Almighty. Help us our name. Everybody come down. Clap your hands. Come on, come on. Help us our name. Come down, Almighty. Help us. Help us our name. We come to pray. We come to pray. We come to pray. Thy name. Oh, thy name. Thy name. Thy name. Thy name. Yeah. Thy name. Clap your hands, everybody. Come to praise thy name. Yeah. Thy name. Thy name. Thy name. Thy name. Thy name. Come on, let's take it out. We come to pray. We come to pray. We come to pray. We come to pray. We come to give him glory. Come to give him honor. Come here, Andre Bird. We come to pray. We come to praise. Give your name the glory. Give your name the honor. Ooh, hey. We come to praise. We come to praise. We come to praise. Hey. We come to praise. Give it all the glory. Give it all the honor. Ooh, hey. Ooh, hey. We come to praise. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We come to praise. We come to praise. We come to praise. Oh, we come to praise. We come to praise. We come to praise. Yeah. We come to praise. Stay right there, Glenn. Anybody came to give God's name glory today? I need everybody to get on your feet and clap like this. Come on, like this. Come on. Come on, I need y'all to clap your hands real hard like this. Come on. Now, while you're clapping, I want you to stomp your foot like this. Watch this. Come on, like this. You got it up there. I see you got it. I see them up in the balcony. They clapping. Don't let them out clap yours. let freedom ring. We're here celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Hallelujah. Turn the organ up. Turn the organ up. Right here in my country.
broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. Oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets crashed back from our first gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, for the land of the free and the home of the Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I'm Karen Brooks Hopkins, president here at BAM, and I would like to thank you so much. Thank you. I would like to thank the New York Fellowship Mass Choir for beginning the 29th annual Brooklyn tribute to Dr. King. On behalf of our board, our chairman, Alan Fishman, and all of our trustees and staff, we welcome you to the largest New York City celebration of Dr. King. And we certainly have a packed house today. It's just wonderful that everyone has come out. Each year, our community comes together to reflect on Dr. King, the civil rights movement, and the ongoing struggle for racial equality and justice. This year, we invite you to share Dr. King's dream alongside of a truly remarkable lineup. In terms of musical guests, we will welcome today Sandra St. Victor and Oya's daughter. Our keynote speaker today is the brilliant speaker, author, activist, and professor, Dr. Cornel West. You will hear from our elected officials, Mayor Bill de Blasio, Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito, Brooklyn Borough President Eric L. Adams, Our District Attorney, Ken Thompson. Senators Charles Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand. And Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. I would like to take a moment to say how grateful we are for the support of Borough President Eric Adams. Our event has been co-hosted by the Brooklyn Borough President's Office for 29 years. We are truly grateful for this support. And I also want to take a moment to thank our other wonderful co-hosts, the great Dr. Rudy Crew and Medgar Evers College of the City University. And today, this celebration would not take place without the ongoing support of Target, our presenting sponsor for this and BAM family for over 12 years. They have been a real partner, and we are truly grateful. I would also like to acknowledge the elected officials joining us today in the audience, including Council Member Laurie Cumbo, New York State Senator Velmanette Montgomery, New York State Assembly Member Walter Mosley, and Public Advocate Letitia James, and so many others. So we have a huge day today, and I'm just going to run you through all of the components of the celebration. Immediately after we finish here in the Opera House, in our BAM Row cinemas, we will offer free screenings of the Central Park 5 at 1 p.m. This important documentary, not to be missed, will be introduced by directors Sarah Burns and David McMahon and one of the Central Park 5, Raymond Santana. Raymond served 6 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. He is a remarkable and resilient individual, and I urge you all to see this important documentary. Also, at 1 o'clock, the brilliant Keynote, Dr. Cornel West, will sign copies of his recent books, The Radical King and Black Prophetic Fire, upstairs in the BAM Cafe. These books will be available for sale by our local bookseller and partner, Greenlight Books. So after this program, please take the escalator or the elevator to the cafe for this important program. And while you are in the BAM Cafe, take a minute to look at the Picture the Dream Youth Arts exhibition. This features original artwork created by the children from University Settlement Atlantic Terminal Community Center, along with their teaching artist, Che Baraka. This is the 7th year that we have partnered with Brooklyn Public Housing residents to celebrate Dr. King's life and legacy through visual arts. Please join me in congratulating Che and these talented young people who are with us today. And thank you to University Settlement for partnering with us on this program. And I'm not done yet. In light of recent events, we wanted to amplify the youth voices in our MLK program today. So on top of the films, the book signing, and everything else going on, at 1:30 next door in our Fishman space at the BAM Fisher Building, we will host a free presentation of our 2014 Arts and Justice after-school program, State of Emergency. This features an original work by high school students and explores the relationship between youth and authority. I have seen the program, it is fantastic, and I urge you to come on over and support the kids. And a final reminder that the film Selma is also playing today in the BAM Row cinemas at 4:30, 7:15, and 9:45. And this powerful film serves as a great reminder to what an incredible man Dr. King was. So, I expect you all to spend the entire day here at BAM and join all of these programs. Finally, I would like to add a personal note of gratitude to all of you, the members of our community who have supported this event for so many years. I am retiring this June, so this will be my final Martin Luther King Jr. Day serving as BAM's president. For the last 36 years as a BAM employee, and the last 16 years as president, it has truly been one of the highlights of my career to be part of the energy and inspiration that this celebration conveys. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you all. And now, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, it means so much to me. And now, I want to introduce our MC for the day, Brooklyn Borough President Eric L. Adams. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Give it up for Karen one more time. Hello, Brooklyn. Each year we look forward to this amazing, amazing event that takes place at BAM, and the energy and what makes it great is really the people. When you come here, you line up early, you wait, you move in a very just polite and cordial fashion, and we appreciate you, and I appreciate you. This was my precinct when I was a cop. I remember the years of being here, and you have a different love affair with a location when you wore a bulletproof vest and protected the children and families of this borough. And it was one of the most rewarding experiences that I've ever have carried out as a police officer. I have something with me I want to talk with you about. Can you see this? Can you read it for me? I saw a young person in the airport, and he was under this sign. And it was a picture of Muhammad Ali knocking out Sonny Liston. And I watched this and studied it over and over and over again. Because, you know, the universe and the ancestor gives us messages. They don't text us or email us. They talk to us through our spirits. And I said, something was attempting to communicate with me. Can we read this together, but not all at once? Let's read the first two letters first. I am possible. I am possible. I am possible if I'm in a community that crime is ridden, but I believe I can do something about it by changing and stopping little children from carving highways of death with 9mm bullets. I am possible if I happen to be gay and I love someone, and I should have the right to love who I want to love at any given time. I am possible if I'm a young black boy and I'm walking through the streets, that I don't have to be stopped and searched and frisked and treated unfairly. I am possible if I live in Brooklyn and I want the right to have affordable housing so I can stay here and live and prosper. I am possible if I'm a little girl and I want to dream about being a CEO or a major executive, and I should not be treated differently. I am possible because I live in a borough where 47% of the people speak a language other than English at home, and my language should not stop me from existing. That's what was being sent to me, to tell the people of Brooklyn that we are possible. We can accomplish whatever we want, whenever we want, however we want. The greatness of this borough is not the brick and mortar. It's the people, the individuals, the countless number of people who make it possible. And so that's my message today, to tell these young people who are in this room, let them know every day that they wake up. Let them say, I am possible. It's a paradigm shift. No matter what we are facing, if we view it through the correct set of eyes and lens, it will turn into a positive and not a negative.
Don't linger in the area of comfort. Move and lean into your discomfort and come out a healthy person on the other side. Because Brooklyn, we are possible. We are possible. No one personifies that more than a woman who has made it possible as being the first Latina to be the speaker in the city council, Speaker Melissa Mark Favorito.
I'm New York City Council Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito, and I am possible. I want to thank the Borough President very much for his leadership, and for Karen Brooks Hopkins for all that she has done for this incredible institution that means so much here to Brooklyn and to New York City. So, buenos dias, Brooklyn. It is an incredible pleasure to be with you here today as we celebrate the life, legacy, and service of an extraordinary man. A man who believed in equality, who believed in justice, and who believed in peace. A man who understood that as humankind, we advance when we acknowledge that which holds us back. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. knew that we are strongest as a society when we are united. That when we move forward together, when we uplift one another, when we work together, we can accomplish incredible things. And what he accomplished was incredible. The civil rights movement shook this country to its very core, forcing society to look within itself and root out the systemic prejudice, inequality, and racism that festered. Thanks to Dr. Martin Luther King, other civil rights leaders, and the everyday men and women who took a stand, we took gigantic steps forward in our constant journey toward justice. But we know that that journey is not over. There is still so much more work to be done to eradicate injustice and inequality, and in the memory of Dr. King, the mantle of leadership has fallen to us, all of us, everyone in this room and everyone in this city. It is up to us to take up the fight. So that is why in the New York City Council, as the legislative branch of this incredibly wonderful, diverse city, we fight for policies that combat inequality wherever it rears its ugly head. Racial inequality, socioeconomic injustice, gender inequality. None of it has any place in our city, and we will tackle it head on. It is why we fought for municipal ID for all New Yorkers. It's why we fought for immigration reform that will no longer criminalize our immigrant New Yorkers without just cause. And it is why we are working to make sure law enforcement and the communities they serve have a productive relationship and a united goal to make this city safe for everyone, no matter where you live or the color of your skin. Now, in a recent interview, today's keynote speaker and intellectual provocateur, Dr. Cornel West, and I say that with much love, said that we must not view Dr. King too narrowly, that at his core, Martin Luther King's commitment was to a radical love of humanity, that as such he was a radical, that he was committed to a collective we and not a narrow we. Now, we often hear quoted from Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. But the sentence right after that, to me, speaks even more strongly, that we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. We are all one, we are all united. Let that thought inspire us all. That was Dr. King's dream. Let it be ours. Gracias.
Powerful speaker. We really enjoy Melissa and what she's doing in the city council. One of the most important aspects of feeling as though you are part of a community is employment. And a job is more than a meaningless ceremonial action that takes place in the AM hours of our days. It is really the precursor that allows us to sleep, to experience the American dream. Countless number of young people are going through the nightmarish reality of being unemployed. We must find jobs for our young people. Leading the charge is the senior senator of the state of New York, Senator Chuck Schumer. Senator.
Thank you. And first, let me thank Eric Adams, our great borough president, for the job he does and for continuing this tradition. I always come. I've been here every year for the last decade with one exception. And I'm sure you'll excuse me. It was in 2013 when I ran the inauguration ceremony that swore in Barack Obama to be re-elected as President of the United States. I'd like to thank Dr. West for being here as well and all of my colleagues in government. Now, today, we honor one of the preeminent thinkers and leaders of the 20th century, Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King, for his courage, his strength, his faith, his conviction, his inspiration, his passion, and his virtue. Now, why do we celebrate and revere the life and memory of Dr. King? It's because his words and deeds accomplished nothing less than the elevation of the entire human race. And when you think about it, Dr. King is the only person who has a holiday just for him. It's the only holiday we have for one man. We have President's Day for all the presidents, and we have July 4th for the patriots on Bunker Hill. But there's only one day for one man. That's today. And what Dr. King did with his huge moral strength, which came from his faith, he took a huge mirror and put it on his broad shoulders and shined it at America. He forced Americans to look into that mirror even though they didn't want to. And when they looked into the mirror, they saw something they didn't like, and they changed. Dr. King is still holding that mirror up to us today, importuning us to have a better, fairer, more just, less divisive, less bigoted, less racist society. And, you know, maybe one day his dream will become true. And on that day, the nature of this holiday will change. It'll be a happy day, fireworks, celebration. But as long as there's bigotry and racism and small-mindedness in America, the holiday has to be a solemn day, a day when we look into ourselves, and that's what it is. And if I had a theme today, it would be how far we've come and how far we have to go. And I'll look at one little area, the right to vote. Now, I don't know if many of you have seen the movie Selma, which, by the way, didn't get enough Academy Award nominations, in my opinion. But it's an amazing movie that showed the strength of Dr. King and how people died and bled for the right to vote. I would ask each of you to make a pledge here today. Take one young person, one person under 21, whether they be black or white or brown or yellow, and take them to that movie so they know how we fought for the struggle to vote. And we have made progress. Without Dr. King and the right to vote, we wouldn't have the first African-American president. There wouldn't be the kinds of changes that we have. But at the same time, we have a very long way to go. As we speak, there are elected officials in Washington and around the country, in states not just southern but northern as well, that are attempting to take away that right to vote by putting barriers in the path of the right to vote. Listen to these two stories. In Ohio, a few years back, an important election, presidential, in the white suburbs, there were 8 voting booths. People didn't have to wait online. In inner city Cleveland and Cincinnati, there was only one voting booth, so people had to wait hours. And in Pittsburgh, a few years ago, we don't know who did this. I'm trying to pass a law to criminalize this type of behavior. Some group put out a letter on official stationery that looked like it was from the Board of Elections to poor and minority neighborhoods. And the letter said, "Notice, your voting day has been changed from Tuesday to Wednesday. Come Wednesday to vote." This is the kind of stuff that's going on, and even without those specific instances in state after state, they're trying to take away the right to vote. Well, we cannot wait. We cannot say, as Eric mentioned, that we are content because some progress has been made. We must go further. And in conclusion, and I do this every year, but I think it's important, I'd like to read to you from one of the most eloquent letters that has ever been part of American literature. We know Dr. King was a great leader and a great moral leader, political leader, faith leader. We know he was a great orator. He was also one of the greatest writers America has ever seen. And he wrote in his letter, called one of the most eloquent, I take this out and read it every so often, not just on this day for inspiration. But it's called A Letter from a Birmingham Jail. Dr. King was in jail for his activities to create the right to vote or to enhance the right to vote. And the leadership, the business white leadership of Birmingham went to visit him and said, "Dr. King, you're right. People should have the right to vote, but slow down. Wait." And this is the letter he penned in that dark jail cell to them and to all of America. And I'm going to read some from it. "For now," by the way, a good part of this, of what Dr. King describes in this letter, we don't have to deal with, but a lot of it, all too much of it, is still true 50 years after he wrote the letter. "For years now, I have heard the word wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with piercing familiarity. This wait has almost always meant never. We have waited more than 340 years for our constitutional and God-given rights. Perhaps it is easy for those who have never felt the stinging darts of segregation to say wait. But when you have seen vicious mobs lynch your mothers and fathers at will and drown your sisters and brothers at whim, when you have seen hate-filled policemen curse, kick, and even kill your black brothers and sisters, when you see the vast majority of your 20 million Negro brethren smothering in an airtight cage of poverty in the midst of an affluent society, when you suddenly find your tongue twisted and your speech stammering as you seek to explain to your 6-year-old daughter why she can't go to the public amusement park that has just been advertised on television, and see tears welling up in her eyes when she is told that Funtown is closed to colored children, and see ominous clouds of inferiority begin to form in her little mental sky, and see her begin to distort her personality by developing an unconscious bitterness toward white people. When you have to concoct an answer for a 5-year-old son who is asking, "Daddy, why do white people treat colored people so mean?" When you take a cross-country drive and find it necessary to sleep night after night in the uncomfortable corners of your automobile because no motel will accept you. When your wife and mother are never given the respected title Mrs. When you are harried by day and haunted by night, living constantly at tiptoe stance, never quite knowing what to expect next, and are plagued with inner fears and outer resentments, when you are ever fighting a degenerating sense of nobodiness, then you will understand why we find it so difficult to wait. In the name of Dr. King and his greatness, let us not wait. Let us move forward. Let us create a more just America. Thank you.
Thank the Senator. You know, one of the other items the child was playing with in the airport was the glow stick. You know, the toy, when you break it, it glows. And as I watched him, I realized something, that at the moment that we feel we are broken, it's really our moment to shine. It's our moment to shine. In some of the most difficult periods I think about and I reflect on, some of those most challenging times in my life that I felt as though that I was broken. I remember studying to become a lieutenant and someone shot out my car windows and how I just felt as though it was a challenging period and I was broken, but it was my moment to shine. And you are going to feel that from time to time. If it's raising your children, if it's going through something on the job or in a marriage or just in a personal challenge of health reasons, you feel as though you can't go on, but really it's that joystick. It's time for you to glow and to shine. Don't ever surrender or ever give up. And we saw that these last few weeks. As our mayor continued to lead the city, it is not his job for public safety on parts of the city. He is the chief executive to protect the entire city. Unions should always fight for their members, but they should never get it twisted. When it's time to determine what policies are going to impact the people of the city of New York, I did not elect the PBA, I elected de Blasio. And I saw something in the mayor these last few weeks. You know, it's like sometimes when you say you're going on a diet, people put some of the foods in front of you that you love the most. He set out an agenda at the beginning of his term. And he and I used to speak and talk and communicate. He never wavered, never second-guessed. And no matter how difficult it was for some people to absorb his testimony about his son, that was a conversation that I had with my 19-year-old son many times. Mayor de Blasio didn't adopt Dante. That is his seed that he planted. That's his son. So this is not political. This is personal. When you look across the table at someone that you must ensure his safety and you realize that the climate is not doing that, you better speak up. That's why I support Mayor Bill de Blasio, the mayor of the city of New York.
Thank you so much. As a great man said, I love you back. And I love Eric Adams, too. Eric is a special voice in this city because Eric Adams served us in uniform, protected us, and he speaks up for fairness and civil rights and human rights. And there is no contradiction between public safety and fairness. There should be no contradiction. The society we aspire to create in the image of Dr. King is a society where people are both safe and respected, safe and treated fairly. I want to thank everyone here at BAM, Karen Brooks Hopkins, and everyone who makes this place a place for everyone, a place for all of Brooklyn, a place for all of New York City. It's happening here at BAM. This is the kind of city we believe in. You've had a lot of great people come before you today. Our senators, Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand, our speaker, Melissa Mark Viverito, our DA, Ken Thompson. You're going to hear from our Congressman, Hakeem Jeffries. You're certainly going to hear from Cornel West, and that's a big deal. And throughout the day, people will rightfully invoke Dr. King's words, because they are the running commentary of our lives, if you think about it, for all of us who are children and grandchildren of that generation. And for some of you who marched in that generation and were activists yourself, this is the soundtrack, this is the conscience we hear Dr. King's many, many truthful, powerful, positive, instructive statements that keep reminding us of what we're here to do. He left us a roadmap, in effect. The question is, are we focused enough? Are we true enough to follow that roadmap? Eric Adams said something important. He said we can't waver. Dr. King taught so clearly that the path to justice is not easy. It's not convenient. It takes struggle. But if you don't waver, you will find your way to that goal. It's as simple as that. If you don't waver. The essence, Dr. King's teachings, the power of love to overcome hate. In this city, we strive now every day to create one city thinking as a family would think. And that may sound hard in a place filled with so many different people, but it's the right goal. I talked a few years ago about the pain of the tale of two cities. And I didn't talk about it because I believed it was fated to be that way. I didn't believe it was the only option. I talked about it because we had to acknowledge it on the pathway to something better that we could create in this generation, in this time, that we could create. We can build bridges. We can find a way to come together in a common cause. That's what Dr. King would demand of us. No matter how difficult, that's what he would demand of us. I know it can be done. I know Dr. King would speak to us of the power of peaceful protest. Because if you look at those years, what he achieved, what his movement achieved, and remember, Dr. King spoke to the highest ideals, and he elevated everyone with him. He pointed out what we could be, what we should be, and you know what? People started to feel it and believe it, and a society started to change. He spoke of the power of love. He was intolerant, in fact, of hateful words, of hateful speech. He demanded that people show the strength to stay focused on the goal, no matter what challenge they faced. We've seen the footage. We've seen all of the extraordinary difficulties those protesters faced. But they kept their message positive, on a peaceful, positive vision forward. And brothers and sisters, it worked. It worked. It worked, and that's what we honor today. When I say it worked, I do not mean that if Dr. King had lived and were among us today that he would be satisfied, because it is inherently clear he would not be satisfied. I have no doubt about that. That's why I talked about the tale of two cities. Dr. King would not be satisfied on many levels, including the economic reality. He would not be satisfied with income inequality growing rampantly. He would not be satisfied that what he was shaping together at the end of his life with the Poor People's Campaign, that those issues were in the front of the public debate at that moment, and then somehow they receded. for the same contradictions only to grow and in some ways deepen. So I'm clear that we have to be purposeful. But what I would say is equally unarguable is that the movement worked, that it was transcendent, that it changed the hearts and minds of people all over this country, that it showed us a different way of doing things, something we still haven't fully explored and used to its full effect, that it showed us tools, some of the greatest tools in history. Remember, Dr. King's concept of nonviolent social protest was met with tremendous skepticism on all sides. On all sides. Those who didn't want change found it an unlikely effort, found it something that would clearly not rock the status quo. Those who believed in the old notion of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth thought nonviolent protest surely would be of limited impact. And both those extremes were wrong, because in fact, it was the only thing that worked. It's the only thing that ever has worked in fundamental social change in our time. So in Dr. King's spirit, we will keep working for change, but it's incumbent upon all of us to reject hateful voices from any side, to reject them openly, to say that doesn't move our movement and our ideas forward, to remember these powerful lessons. One of the most extraordinary moments in this city in recent years, which led to real and tangible change, was the Father's Day March a few years ago, the silent march down Fifth Avenue. Were some of you here today a part of that? Do you remember that? Do you remember the impact it had, how it helped turn the tide on a broken stop and frisk policy? Do you know that just 3 years ago in this city, there were over 700,000 stops in 1 year? 700,000 in 1 year, 90% of those stopped, innocent in every way, shape, and form. And the silent march occurred and protest occurred that was purposeful and focused and nonviolent. And lo and behold, a few days ago, we announced the statistics for the year 2014. There were 47,000 stops in New York City. That was the result. That extraordinary change was the result of a purposeful movement. That means in 2014, hundreds of thousands of people were treated with the respect they deserve and not put through the indignity of an unfair stop. That changes people's lives. That changes the lives of our young people in particular. Our young men of color deserve our respect, our support. They deserve to be upheld. But it wouldn't have happened. That change wouldn't have happened if people had not utilized the finest tools of the King tradition. They hadn't seen that that was the way to break through. It's typified by one of Dr. King's many great quotes. Quote, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." That is the message. That is the power of the message. We will move forward as a city. We will move forward to deeper respect for all. We will move forward to true respect between police and community. Police respecting the communities they serve, communities respecting the police who serve them. It is a simple model. It is a necessary model. And remember, take yourself back to the silent march. Take yourself back to all the efforts that called for justice. Remember that as we did that, we were presented time and again with an analysis that said, if we were to create a more fair city, if we were to end the abuses of stop and frisk, or if we were to reduce marijuana arrests or make any number of other reforms, the inevitable outcome would be a less safe a more violent, more anarchistic society. That's what we're told over and over. But we have a whole year to look at 2014. As I said, the stops came down dramatically. The marijuana arrests came down dramatically. There was more opportunity to focus on actual crime, real crime. So people were being treated more fairly, and guess what happened? Murders went down. Overall crime went down. Robberies went down. We became safer because we became fairer. It's as simple as that. I want to tell you a quick story. I know you got a lot of speakers ahead, so I just want to do this quickly, but it's powerful. Because the hearts of New Yorkers are good. The hearts of our people are good. Shortly after I took office, there was a moment that could have been a profound tragedy all around, but it turned out to show us something very meaningful. A young rookie cop confronted a fare evader on a bus in Crown Heights. He asked the man to get off the bus. The man got off the bus and pulled out a gun and shot at the cop. Two rookie cops and partners, one fell having been shot. The other pursued the perpetrator. The officer lay on the ground, and residents of the community immediately ran to his aid. People of every walk of life, every background, ran to the aid of the fallen officer immediately. And as the perpetrator ran away and found a building to run into, community residents pointed to the police where the perpetrator had gone and helped to achieve the arrest. Think about that. In that one vignette in Crown Heights a year ago, community helping police, police helping community, all working for a common goal. That didn't get publicized a lot. Are you shocked? That didn't get publicized a lot, but that is the truth of this city. People want to find that way forward, that way to mutual respect. It is available to us. There are doubting Thomases always. Every point of social change along the way has been confronted by those who say it is impossible. It is the price of admission of trying to make things better for all of us. But in this city, we have an extraordinary trait of perseverance. In this city, we have often led the nation and the world in understanding that things could be different and actually showing by example what that difference looks like. I know it is available to us once again. I know we will create that fairer and more just city, and at the same time, a safer city for all. I know we will create that mutual respect between police and community, and it will not happen overnight, but it will happen. It will happen because we are resolute, because we need it, because we believe in it. And remember, when anyone says to you, it can't happen, when anyone tries to dissuade you from positive action, one more quote, one of the greatest of Dr. King's quotes in my view. The arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Either I have to bring the mic down or I have to stand on my tippy toes. You know, I often talk about as I move through the borough that, you know, what we consume physically in the way of food nourishes our physical anatomy, but music and song and art nourishes our spiritual anatomy. And so many people are spiritually obese or malnourished because they don't get the true artistic experience that we have to offer. And so with all the talk, let's bring on some music as we bring the New York Fellowship Choir to sing for us.
Clap your hands and give God praise. Amen. Well, the song says, let's start it. The song says, through trials, tribulations, through misery and strife, I'm determined to hold out. I've learned to trust in God. Anybody learn to trust in God? Come on, y'all clap your hands like this. Come on, come on. Can y'all get on your feet and help us sing this? Come on, listen. Through trials, tribulation, through misery and strife, I am determined to hold out. I've learned to trust. Come on, clap your hands like that. Come on. Through trials, tribulation, through misery and strife, I am determined to hold out. I've learned to trust. Listen to this. He brought me from a mighty long way. I was so lost I couldn't even pray. Thank God I'm saved today. I've learned to trust. Come on, we're gonna say it again. Through trials, come on, get on your feet. Tribulation, through misery and strife, I am determined to hold out. I've learned to trust. Oh, He brought me from a mighty long way. I was so lost, I couldn't even pray. Thank God I'm saved today. I've learned to trust. Come on, clap your hands, everybody. All I want y'all to do is say, trust Him. Trust Him. Come on, sopranos, get ready. I need to hear you. Come on, sopranos. Trust Him. Trust Him. Let me see if I can get all the sopranos. Where my sopranos at? Stand up, sopranos. You sing in your choir. Hold it, y'all. If you sing soprano at your church choir, I need you to get on your feet. Where you at? I see you. You sang soprano in the chorus at school. You in my choir today. Get on your feet. Come on. Now I want to hear all the sopranos help us say it. Trust Him. Now let me hear y'all say it. Come on. I like it. I hear you. Y'all got it. Come on, everybody, trust Him. Trust Him. All right. Where my altos at? You sing alto in your church. Where you at? Get on your feet, all the altos. I see you. Altos, help me say, trust Him. 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 Now I need all the tenors. Listen, I need all the men. You know you can sing. I need you to get on your feet and help us say this. Where my tenors at? My bass, my baritone. Come on, come on. Tenors, y'all ready? Come on, here we go. I hear somebody. Listen to this. Trust him. Trust him. Trust him. Trust him. Yeah, there you go. Trust him. I see Miss Green. I see you. Come on, all the tenors say. Woo, woo. I hear you. Good, good. Now I need everybody to get on your feet. Come on, everybody get up on your feet. Come on, come on. Get up on your feet. Come on. Oh. I need y'all in the front to stand up so everybody in the back can stand up. Everybody, trust him. Oh. I trust the Lord. With all of my heart. He's been good to me. Oh, I trust him. I trust the Lord. And I found out he's able. He's able. Oh, he's able. He's able. Trust him. Yeah. Oh, I trust the Lord with all of my heart, with all that I got. He's been good to me. He's been good to me. He's able. He's able. Able to heal. Able to deliver. Come and say he's able. Come and say he's able. He's able. He's able. He's able. He's able. Come and say he's able. Come and say he's able. All the music, he's able. He's able. Oh yes, he is. How? He's able. He's able. He's able. He's able. Trust him. Oh, trust him. I've learned to trust. You know, years ago, our people wouldn't even be allowed to be in a place like this. But because of what Dr. Martin Luther King did, help me say, he's able. When I was a little boy, growing up in East New York, Brooklyn, I never thought that we'd have a black president. But today, we got an African-American president. And what I didn't think was able to happen, God made it happen. I need you to get on your feet and help us. He's able. He's able. Oh, he's able. Oh, he's able. He's able. Clap your hands and give God a praise. running. I feel like shouting. I feel like dancing. I wish we could take a 30-second praise break and bam. 1, 2, 3, come on, clap your hands. This is my heat able praise. Somebody clap your hands. That stuff. If we start that stuff, we'll be here all night. Because when I think of the goodness of Jesus and all that he's done for me, I don't care where I am, I give God the best praise I can. My mom and my dad, some years ago, the late, great Reverend Timothy Wright, you knew him, and the late Betty Wright, they came together, they wrote a song, and it simply said, one name, the name above all names, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Anybody love that name? And it went something like this, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Yes. Y'all turn my mic up, they can't hear me. Turn it up in the house. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Oh, Jesus. Jesus, Jesus. When you're in trouble, that's the name you need to call on. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Oh, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Come on, help the choir say that. Come on. Jesus. Come on, let it ring out from your soul. Jesus. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Something about that name, Jesus. Jesus, Jesus. Oh, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus, Jesus. Anybody know him as a Savior? Help me say, Savior, Savior, Savior. Savior, Savior. Come on, he's a Savior. Savior, Savior, Savior. Savior, Savior. Savior, Savior. Oh, Jesus. Jesus, Jesus. Anybody glad you're free today? Help me say freedom, freedom, freedom. Freedom, freedom, freedom. Come on, no more shackles holding us. Freedom. Freedom, freedom, freedom. Oh, freedom. Freedom, freedom. I see you, Deborah Massey. Oh, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus, Jesus. Have you ever been sick in your body and God healed you? Raise your hand and say, healer. Healer, healer, healer. Anybody know him as a healer, healer, healer? Healer, healer, healer. Come on, get on your feet and declare it. Healer, healer, healer. Healer, healer, healer. Oh, Jesus, Jesus. Now let's take it out and say, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Come on, tell the Lord, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Come on, Brother Belton. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Ooh, yeah, yeah. Jesus, Jesus. I learned to call that name, Jesus, Jesus. I'm a witness that he'll be there when you call him. He'll be right there just when you need him. Oh, yes, he will. He'll comfort you, he'll protect you. Yes, I learned to call that name. No way I can live without him. I cannot live without him. I cannot live without Jesus. Yeah, nobody can treat you like Jesus. He's my best friend. He'll take you through the storm. He'll break you through the rain. He'll take you through your sickness. He'll take you through your pain. Yeah. I learned to call that name. Jesus. Nobody greater. Jesus. There's nobody greater than Jesus. Yeah. In the midnight hour, I can call him. Jesus. When there's nobody there, when your friends walk out on you, he'll be right there to protect you. He'll be there to talk to you. I've learned to depend on him. Yes, I do. When my money runs out, he's right there. Everybody call his name. I said, everybody call his name. I said, everybody call his name. Come on, one more time. Jesus. God bless you. Jesus. Oh, Jesus. I love him. I love him. Oh, Jesus. God bless you. You can hear more of this at 1745 Pacific Street, Brooklyn, New York, Grace Tabernacle, Sunday morning.
Let's give it up one more time for the choir. Great music. I don't know if the name Email Jones rings a bell to any of you. I was watching Barack Obama doing an interview right after his election, and he became emotional about the name Email Jones, and I looked him up and realized that he was the leader of the Senate in Chicago, and I called him, and I stated that our president-elect spoke about you in a very passionate way, and I would love to come and meet with you. And he said, come, if you could get down, I'm getting ready to retire, if you could get down to see me. I took the next flight out and sat down and spoke with him. And throughout the entire lunch, he said one thing that resonated. He said when Barack was running for president, there were a lot of people in the Senate who raised the question of who do you think you are that you could run? You're just getting here. Who do you think you are? He said the problem wasn't who Barack thought he was. It was who they did not believe they were. They could have ran. And so we have, in my opinion, I've said it over and over again, we have our own version of Barack, a person who could have gone to any corporate law firm that he wanted to go to. He decided to give back his life. And now he's on the Judiciary Committee where all of this civil rights legislation will go through and pass through. All that we're talking about, the changes in America, must go through the legislative process. We have three forms of change. One is agitation. We must remain in the streets and compel government to do what's right. 2, we have to negotiate. And 3, we have to legislate. The great Adam Powell and others who pushed through this important legislation. We have one of the finest legislators in Washington, D.C., in the congressional person in the 8th Congressional District, my good friend, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries.
Happy King Day. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. Let me first just thank my good friend Eric Adams for that very generous introduction. He's doing a great job as our borough president. We're thankful for him. I also like that checkered blazer. He went retro on us for King Day. But you know what I like about Eric Adams? He's not just a sharp dresser, but he's got a sharp mind. And he's using it on our behalf. I'm thankful for him as I stand here today to commemorate Dr. King. We knew Dr. King was a good man, a hardworking man, a family man, a well-educated man, a community-centered man, and above all else, a God-fearing man. And this country is a better place today because Dr. King walked amongst us. You know, when I first got to Congress, a legendary figure in this country, John Lewis, called me over. John Lewis is a congressman now, but back in 1965, he was the chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and one of the leaders in Selma. John Lewis called me over and said, "Young man, you're from Brooklyn, right?" I said, "Yes, sir." Y'all know Brooklyn is always in the house. He said, I'm hearing some good things about you, but I don't want you to come down here to Washington and get into any trouble unless it's good trouble. You know, Dr. King was considered a troublemaker because he challenged the status quo, was willing to stand up to the establishment to combat injustice. He was considered a troublemaker. 50 years ago, President Johnson signed the historic 1965 Voting Rights Act into law, but it would never have happened without the leadership and the agitation and the troublemaking of Dr. King. And of course, that piece of legislation is widely viewed as the most significant legislative accomplishment of the civil rights movement. But 50 years later, while we certainly have come a long way, we know we still have a long way to go. I'm convinced that the overwhelming majority of police officers across this country are hardworking individuals dedicated to protecting and serving our community. But we have to give voice to the fact that there's still some problems. We have a problem with the excessive use of police force. Most often unleashed on communities of color. We have a problem with the failure of the criminal justice system all too often to hold the small number of police officers who cross the line accountable. There's a problem. We have a problem with overly aggressive policing practices that bear no relationship to public safety. Dr. King would want us to say there's a problem that has to be corrected. And so as I take my seat, I just want to suggest that we use King Day to recharge the batteries, restart the engine, re-engage the fight for social and economic justice, and in the name of Dr. King, go out there into the world and get into some good trouble. God bless you.
Great things from Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, real good leader. We had the senior senator here earlier, and now we want to introduce of the senator, his partner, Senator Gillibrand. Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you, Eric, for your leadership, your determination to fight for all families across New York. I'm very grateful. I also want to recognize Karen Brooks Hopkins, president of BAM. She's been an outstanding leader and continues to lead the mission here. And Alan Fishman, the chairman of the board, who works hard every day to make sure there's economic opportunities throughout Brooklyn and throughout New York State. This has been a very tough month for our city. But Martin Luther King Day is a rare chance for us to stop what we're doing, put our minds together, and reflect on what Dr. King's life means for us today. And I think, considering all the events of recent weeks and months, that this day could not come soon enough. As an uneasy tension weighs down across the city, and as the pessimism and cynicism become deafening in Washington, now, more than ever, we need to reflect on Dr. King's legacy. Because as darkness continues to spread around the globe, from the bombed-out cities in Syria and the blood-stained buildings in Paris, to a grieving family in Staten Island and two heroes sitting in a police car in Bed-Stuy, we have to look to Dr. King, who said it best. For all of us today, the battle is in our hands. The road ahead is not altogether a smooth one. There are no broad highways to lead us easily and inevitably to quick solutions. We must keep going. Dr. King preached these words 50 years ago as the nation struggled to achieve basic equality. As our communities keeled from side to side like boats in stormy waters, waiting to reach a sturdy shore of a better tomorrow. And today, decades later, even as our nation emerges from the worst economic crises since the Great Depression, and even as we march through the 21st century wiser and more connected than we've ever been, some things still feel the same. After all these years, how many Americans are stuck in the cycle of poverty, working 2 jobs but still trapped below the poverty line? Let us finally, as a city and a state, raise the minimum wage, and let us finally, as Americans, raise the minimum wage out of poverty. After all these years, how many Americans still have to quit their jobs and lose income at the birth of a baby? Or when your mother or father is sick and dying? Let's finally give all workers the paid family and medical leave that they desperately need to care for their families. And after all these years, how many Americans still can't afford to have a family, buy a home, start a business because they are drowning in student loans? Finally, let's make college affordable for all Americans. And last, after all these years, how many Americans still feel disenfranchised at the polls? How many Americans still are having trouble registering to vote or don't have the right to vote? Let's finally allow online voter registration in all 50 states, along with early voting. Martin Luther King Day is the day to think about solutions. Solutions that make our communities stronger. It's a day that we should feel lifted up, to feel reinvigorated, to embrace the spirit of Dr. King and act on it. In the words of Dr. King, let us rise up tonight with greater readiness. Let us stand with greater determination. Let us move in these powerful days, these days of challenge, to make America what it ought to be. We have an opportunity to make America a better nation. God bless you, and let's work on Dr. King's words.
You know, out of everyone that I introduced today, you know, the next person I just really appreciate, because he quietly and silently goes about doing what I believe is paramount, and that's public safety. Public safety is the prerequisite of prosperity. No matter how prosperous we are, if we are not safe, we cannot make it happen. An amazing arrest and prosecution of individuals who were smuggling guns into our country using the airport. 153 guns he took off the street that would never harm our family. But he didn't stop there. Look at what he's doing with wrongful convictions. 11 people. Those cases were closed and dwindling away. Men were incarcerated. Can you imagine how horrific it is to be spending decades in jail for crimes you did not commit? And he took on that fight. When he told me when he first got elected, he said, Eric, I'm going after those wrongful convictions. And he did something else. And I remember talking to him after he did it, going after small amounts of marijuana and stopping the prosecution of individuals who's carrying small amounts of marijuana. Let me tell you why this was important. People on Park Avenue smoke as many blunts as the cat on Park Place. Yet, you were only finding the joint on our children. Everyone has purchased bamboo. And just for Ken to be willing to state, I'm going to turn this office into a place that will pursue justice and not just us. That's what he did. And it took strength, it took courage. It took the willingness of redefining law and order. And everyone knows me, I'm about law and order. I'm not about law and disorder. I'm about law and order. And if you commit predatory crimes, rape, robbery, burglary, your butt needs to go to jail. But we should not be criminalizing young people and destroying their futures, and the DA understands that. We're not closing the doors. No one personifies and embodies the energy of Dr. King in ensuring that we do not treat people in an unfair manner more than the district attorney in the county of Kings, DA Ken Thompson.
I want to thank Borough President Eric Adams for such a great introduction. Good morning. I'm Brooklyn DA Ken Thompson, and I am truly honored to be here. You know, from Dred Scott to Plessy versus Ferguson, from Emmett Till to the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, from Smyrna, Goodman, and Cheney to Medgar Evers, there have always been grave injustices committed in our country's history. But thank God there's also been men and women who are willing to stand up and fight against those injustices. And some of them who literally have been willing to give their lives to make this country live up to its declaration that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And among those are the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so I join you today, along with people all across the country, to honor and celebrate the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who's one of the greatest men to ever live. Now, there are many things that made Dr. King great, but what stands out most for me was his enormous courage. You see, when they bombed his house and nearly killed his wife and daughter in Montgomery, Alabama, and he didn't give up, but kept going, he showed us courage. When he faced violence and intimidation and the threat of death day after day and didn't stop, but kept going, he showed us courage. And when they kept putting him in jail over and over again to break his spirit, he didn't collapse, but rather he wrote us a letter from the Birmingham jail. And when Dr. King stood up and gave his speech against the Vietnam War at Riverside Church, a year to the day before he would be assassinated in Memphis, Dr. King indicted the United States government when he said that we are taking black men who our society has crippled and sending them 8,000 miles away to guarantee liberties in Southeast Asia, which they have not been able to find in Southwest Georgia or East Harlem. Few men, black or white, would have had the guts to say that at that time. And so we here in Brooklyn and throughout our city can honor the legacy of Dr. King by just taking a semblance of his courage and standing up and making change. Right here in Brooklyn, there have been men who were wrongfully convicted of murders and sentenced to long prison terms. That is not justice, and we must have the courage to stand up and to correct the miscarriages of justice that are staring us right in the face. And we must also show the courage to stand up and unite all across the communities in Brooklyn against the gun violence that's killing so many of our children right before our very eyes. And finally, we must all also show the courage to stand up and bring about a fairer criminal justice system. A criminal justice system that would dispense justice evenly, regardless of race, regardless of how much money you have, regardless of where you live. If we come together and we show the courage to do the things that are necessary, we will not only honor the legacy of Dr. King, but we will make Brooklyn a stronger, safer, and more just place to live. God bless you all.
Real good cat, man. Love Ken Thompson, him and his family. His wife is here. He's a real good person. Thank you. Sandra St. Vic and Oya's daughters to entertain us, continue to nourish our spirits.
Good morning. All right now. Hey. Happy MLK Day. Oh, hanging on. All right. From the Indians who welcome the pilgrims to the buffalo that once ruled the plains, like the vultures circling beneath a dark cloud, looking for the rain, looking for the rain. And just like the cities stagger on the coastline, and a nation that just can't stand much more, just like the forest buried beneath the highway has never had a chance to grow, never had a chance to grow. And now it's winter. It's winter in America. And all of our healers, they've been killed or betrayed, yeah, but the people know that it's winter. It's winter in America. And ain't nobody fighting, no. 'Cause nobody knows what to save. You got to save your soul. God knows from winter in America. The Constitution, a noble piece of paper with free society. See, they struggle, but they died in vain. And now democracy, she's ragtime on the corner. She's looking for some rain. A little bit of shitty, just a little bit of rain. Yeah, I see the robins in barren treetops, watching races marching across the floor. And just like the peace sign, it vanished in our dreams. It never had a chance to grow. See, she never had a chance to grow. Yeah. No, the Bible is winter. Winter in America. Yes, it is. And all of our healers, got to save your soul. God knows from the winter in America. Give me a little bit, Jeff, right here. Martin Luther King, they killed Medgar. They're killing characters today. Y'all know what I'm saying, that it's winter. Winter in America. Oh yes, ain't nobody fighting. Nobody's fighting. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. No, 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 no. Nobody's fighting. Nobody's fighting. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what to say. Song written in 1971 by Gil Scott-Heron is still relevant right now. How is that? How is that? What have we learned? This next song is off of my new album, and it's called What Have We Learned? And that's what I have to ask myself every freaking day. Born to fight, born to bleed, weeping bodies trained to bleed. Round and round we're circling, what we learned of mastery or nothing. What have we learned? Hey, nothing. Nothing. What awaits she who believes of gold or tumbleweeds? Casting net of master thieves. Master thieves. What have we learned? Honestly, nothing. What have they learned? Hey, nothing. Nothing. Hey, hey, wait a minute. See my head spinning, vertigo, chasing time. They've shown how many lies have we been told? How many lives have to go before we reap the benefits we sown? Cosmetic face we're shown. The casualties of progress, I guess. Bring it back. Born to fight, born to bleed, born to bleed. Bodies trained to bleed. Round and round we're won't make you fall, no. Sayonara, on the water, singing Kumbaya, Lord. Justin Bowler, and we learn higher by the culture war and loop-titty-loop-tee. Lunacy and rolling, what the have we learned? Say, what can you do? What can you do? Can you do? What can you do? Can you do? What can you do? What can you do? What can you do, brother? What can you do, sister? Circling around, circling across the floor. What the hell have we learned? Higher bar than culture war and Saturn returns. Hail to the mighty dollar, yeah. Lunacy and boulder, what the hell have we learned? Circling across the bowl like higher bar culture war. Some good no no touch the returns. Lunacy and boulder. What have we learned? Think about it. This one is a Curtis Mayfield song, and again, song written in the early '70s, and could have wrote it this morning. Gonna feature Mills James on this one. He's coming up. We people who are darker than blue, are you gonna hang around this town and let what others say come true? We're just good for nothing, they all figure. A boy's grown of shiftless jigger. Now we can't hardly stand for that. Or is it really where it's at? We people who are darker than blue, this ain't no time for segregating. Talking about brown and yellow too. Our yellow girl, can you tell? We're just the surface of our dark, deep well. If your mind can really see, you know your color the same as me. Pardon me, brother, while you stand in your glory, I know you won't mind if I tell the whole story. There's some light right here for my brother. Can I get some light on me? If there is any one thing that we must see today is that these are revolutionary times. All over the globe, men are revolting against old systems of exploitation and oppression. And out of the wounds of a frail world, new systems of justice and equality are being born. The shirtless and barefoot people of the land are rising up as never before. The people who sat in darkness have seen a great light. They are saying unconsciously, as we say in one of our freedom songs, "Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Nobody turn me around. Nobody." Yes. Now I know we have great respect for the sister and brother. It's even better, yeah. You see, but there's that joker in the streets, loving one brother, then killing the other. See, when the time comes and we're really free, there'll be no brothers left, you see. We people who are darker than blue, this ain't no time for segregating, talking about brown and yellow too. We're just good for nothing, they all figure. Well, boys grown of shiftless jigger. Is that really? Your mind can be see. You know your color just like me. Pardon me, brother. Shed your glory. I know you won't mind if I tell the whole story. Pardon me, sister. You know I know we come a long, long way. But let us not be so satisfied that tomorrow we're bringing an even brighter day.
Unreal, give it up again. I used to dance like that, but I still got a body like that. Well, bring on our Congresswoman, Vice Chair of the CBC, the only African-American, Caribbean-American from New York representing us in Congress, a voice, a strong, solid sister, Congresswoman Yvette Clarke.
A pleasant good afternoon to everyone. I'd like to thank the Brooklyn Academy of Music, Karen Hopkins and her team, alongside my brother, one of the most outstanding leaders here in the city of New York, someone who speaks truth to power and has the power to enforce it, our Borough President, Eric Adams. To Dr. Cornel West, our keynote speaker for this afternoon, and to our talented performers, the New York Fellowship Mass Choir, and let's give it up once again for Sandra St. You know, we are here today to honor a man whose contributions to this nation and to our world has changed history, who was a pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, a position he assumed at the age of 25. He became a leader in the effort that continues to the present to secure for the descendants of women and men held in bondage as slaves the full promise of an American dream. For his courage, his activism, the confrontation through nonviolence, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was described as a radical, as an agitator. Descriptions that today are applied to many of those individuals who refuse to submit to inequality in silence. Those women and men of courage who raise their voices, who march and protest, calling our society to its conscience. His work must continue to inspire our efforts. In a nation where many of the same disparities still exist, in a 21st century in which stereotypes of young women and men who are African American continue to limit their opportunities and threaten their lives. His commitment to resistance, nonviolent resistance to the inequities perpetrated under Jim Crow laws in the South and informally up north requires that he focus the attention of the world on the reality of life for millions of African Americans who were denied the access to the American dream. The millions who could not buy a home or eat a dinner in a restaurant or stay in a hotel, who are even denied the most basic rights in a democracy, the right to vote. Dr. King famously proclaimed that injustice anywhere threatens justice everywhere. So we cannot allow our nation or the world to ignore injustice, whether in Brooklyn, New York, or in Ferguson, Missouri, or in Baga, Durabaga, Nigeria, where thousands of families were recently killed by Boko Haram militants. Leaders who came from around the world to Paris, France, after an attack that killed 13 people have yet to visit Nigeria. The attention of the world has not yet focused on the atrocities that have occurred there. But we, the legacy holders of Dr. King, must speak for the voiceless. We must get up, disrupt, and get in the way of the unjust. As your representative in Congress, I have a responsibility to focus attention on the disparities and the life-sustaining issues that persist here in the United States and around the world, to fight until the righteousness rains down and justice is like the air we breathe. We've got to be able to breathe. I cannot remain silent. I am proud to have worked with President Obama and my colleagues in Congress to implement the Affordable Care Act, which has allowed millions of Americans to access comprehensive health care. And 5 years after hundreds of thousands of Haitians lost their lives in the devastating earthquake, Congress refused to allow Haitian nationals with approved visa applications to enter into the United States to support relief efforts with their remittances. I cannot remain silent. I am proud to have worked with Senator Gillibrand, the Department of Homeland Security, and President Obama on the program that will allow 55,000 Haitians to enter the United States to wait here for their adjustments. We must focus our attention on these injustices that exist in our world, and as Dr. King did, our radical warrior, liberator of humanity. As members of a community that has offered opportunity to generations of women and men, we have the compassion, the humanity to resolve these problems that exist in our communities and to build the future for which Dr. King's dream for his children, grandchildren, our children were realized. I want to thank you for coming to this wonderful commemoration this afternoon, this morning. Sisters and brothers, the struggle continues. The battle continues. I want to meet you all on the battlefield. It is now my distinct honor and privilege to bring to you another warrior, someone who has authored a book called The Radical King. He's a brother of extraordinary intellect and love for humankind. He is one who speaks truth to power and lifts us all with respect to who we are, where we are, and the power that we have yet to realize as a people. Sisters and brothers, I want you to stand to your feet and give a rousing round of applause to none other than Dr. Cornel West.
What a blessing to be here, Brooklyn. The greatest borough in the world. My dear, dear sister Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, I want to thank you for those kind and generous words. What a celebration this is for our dear brother. Just look at him, look at him, look at him. Oh, I love you right back. And I tell you, anytime I get a chance to say something about Martin Luther King Jr., I'm there. Why? Because I know I am who I am because somebody loved me. Somebody cared for me. Somebody attended to me. And Martin Luther King Jr. is one of those who deeply, deeply love me. So I want to thank my dear sister Karen Brooks Hopkins for her leadership of this institution. Give it up again for Sister Hopkins. We want to thank her for the work that she's done. I want to thank our dear Sister Stephanie and Sister Tamara and the others who continue to keep this place a place that's open to all trying to tell the truth, especially through the arts, because you see the New York Fellowship Mass Choir, Sandra St. Victor and Oya's daughter and the brother who was dancing, those arts are in no way ornamental or decorative. They are constitutive of who we are. There's no Martin Luther King Jr. without Mahalia Jackson. There's no SNCC without Curtis Mayfield and Bernice Reagan, John and Gil Scott-Heron, and Donny Hathaway and Nina Simone. Oh, yes. No, the arts are fundamental. I want to thank the leaders at Medgar College. My dear brother Rudy Crew is back in the house again. Indeed, in that magnificent gathering of writers, Assistant Professor Brenda Smith. Oh, Medgar. Give it up for Medgar, y'all. And what can I say about Borough President Eric L. Adams? My God. On the cutting edge. But as I said before, anytime I hear the name of Martin Luther King Jr., it makes me shake and tremble and shiver and quiver. We ought not to allow his name to flow through our mouths and on our lips without feeling unsettled and unnerved and even unhoused. Why? Because it's so easy to sanitize and sterilize the brother. It's so easy to tame and defang our dear brother. It's so easy to deodorize Martin Luther King Jr. And every year you see him just Santa Clausified. Just turn him into Santa Claus. Old man with a smile, toys in his bag, making everybody feel good. Well, I'm here to tell you that the FBI said he was the most dangerous man in America. He cut against the grain. He upset some folk. He pushed some folk against the wall, but keep in mind, fundamentally, he was a Jesus-loving free black man.
Meaning what? That he was on the same caravan of love that the Isley brothers sing about. He embodied the love supreme of the inimitable John Coltrane. He was a conductor on the love train of the OJs. And it's something to be part of a wave of love against a people who've been so hated and despised and dishonored and devalued and rebuked and scorned and spit on and dominated and exploited, and at the same time viewed just as some exotic objects to entertain folk when they want to be stimulated, but when it comes to their humanity, often rendered invisible. But when you look in the eyes of Martin Luther King Jr., you ought to see that tradition. He's not an isolated icon on some pedestal to be viewed as some figure in a museum. He's part of a tradition of a people who were terrorized and traumatized and stigmatized for 400 years. 400 years. And when he was terrorized, he learned something from Frederick Douglass. He learned something from Sojourner Truth. He learned something from Harriet Tubman. Jim Crow, he learned something from Ida B. Wells. He learned something from A. Philip Randolph. He learned something from Marcus Garvey. What did he learn? He learned that I would rather be dead than afraid. That he said, I'm going to straighten my back up. I'm not gonna laugh when it ain't funny and scratch when it don't itch. I'm not gonna wear a mask, try to make my way through a mainstream just to be successful and end up well-adjusted to injustice. Or end up well-adapted to indifference. Martin Luther King Jr. comes from a tradition of a people, a blues people who know every catastrophe on intimate terms with terrorism and decided not to terrorize others. That's a lesson for the world. You think after 400 years there'll be a black Al-Qaeda? No. A black ISIS? No. Al-Qaeda, ISIS, gangsters, thugs. We've been gangsterized, we've been thugified, but we refuse to be gangsters and thugs in response. That's a message for the world. And the world better take notice. Because the whole world got the blues, not just the nation. And if you don't learn something from a blues people, you're going to lose the best of whatever civilization you're part of. And that's why the voices and the visions of not just Martin King, but of Malcolm X, of Stokely Carmichael, of Diane Nash, they come together. Don't isolate my brother. He's part and parcel of a chorus. Like a Duke Ellington jazz orchestra with a little Johnny Hedges here and a little Gonzalez there. But raising all of their voices together in such a way that it produces such magnificent collective performance that it stirs your soul. And this is very important these days because most of our culture and music is just stimulating bodies. It's not stirring souls. Yes. See, Martin Luther King Jr. is a living example of the response to the 4 questions of the great W.B. Du Bois, who lived here in Brooklyn, partly under house arrest, under FBI surveillance, meeting with Paul Robeson, also under house arrest, FBI surveillance. And Du Bois said what? 89 years old. Du Bois embarks on a trilogy. I want to write a novel to pass on the great tradition to the younger generation. I know I'm old school, I'm speaking, he says, to new school. That's not his language, that's my language, but I'm just adding on. In that first novel, The Ordeal of Man's Art, you turn to page 275. He said, I've been wrestling with 4 questions. How shall integrity face oppression? Integrity. Oh, dear brother. Was not just a spiritual titan, not just a magnificent leader, not just a great preacher. He was a man of integrity. And I didn't say cupidity, love of money.
He died broke as the 10 Commandments financially. And we're living at a time when so many folk are driven by love of money. Everything for sale. Everybody's for sale. All you got to do is just dangle some cash in position or little assets, and lo and behold, their voices get very diluted. Martin Luther King Jr. used to say over and over again, especially the black leaders, who came down on him so hard when he came out against the war, came down on him so hard when he tried to organize poor people across the board. He told Brother Andy Young, I love you, Brother Andy, but when you talked about me so bad, I understand that what you say may get you a corporation grant, but it won't get you a foothold in the kingdom of truth. That's Martin Luther King Jr. In the last year and a half of his life, 72% of all Americans disapproved of our brother. And 55% of black people disapproved of Martin Luther King Jr. the last year and a half of his life. We need to remind our brother that everybody loves him now that the worms got his body. But when he was walking around in flesh and blood and trying to tell the truth, and the condition of truth is always what? To allow suffering to speak. When he came out against the war, they said, oh, this makes you unpatriotic. He says, no, you never knew me. I'm a cross bearer before I'm a flag waver. Every flag is under the cross. I choose to wear the cross. What is the cross? Unarmed truth. What is the cross? Unconditional love and justice is what love looks like in public, just like tenderness is what love ought to feel like in private. He said, I'm a love warrior. You never knew me if you think I'm not going to tell the truth about what's happening, not just with the precious black brothers and sisters in Gut Bucket, Jim Crow, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, or the Jim Crow in the North, the Jim Crow Jr. in the North. Like the new Jim Crow in the prison industrial complex across the country. But I'm going to talk about the babies in Vietnam, too. I'm going to talk about the babies in Latin America. I'm going to talk about the babies in the Middle East. I can hear Martin Luther King Jr. saying explicitly, a Palestinian baby has exactly the same status as an Israeli baby. I can love my Jewish brothers and sisters. I can love my Palestinian brothers and sisters, but occupation of any people is wrong. That's the kind of Martin Luther King Jr. we need. That's what the young folk are looking for. That's what's happening in Ferguson. That's what's happening in Staten Island. They don't want the same thing. They're looking for something, as Ashford and Simpson would put it, real. They're looking for the real thing. What is the real thing? Integrity. I didn't say purity. Martin Luther King Jr. was not a pure and pristine brother. He was a human being. Just like me and you, he was a featherless, two-legged, linguistically conscious creature born between urine and feces. What he was, that's what you are, that's what I am. That's what made him a funketeer like Bootsy Collins and George Clinton. We all emerge in the funk of our mama's womb, and that love push gets us out. And we're not here that long. Someday our bodies will be the culinary delights of terrestrial worms. That's funky too. But what you gonna be in the meantime, in that dash between mama's womb and tomb? That's what Brother Martin was wrestling with. That's why he said, longevity is not my focus. I want integrity, I want quality. That first question of Du Bois, how shall integrity face oppression? Look at Martin Luther King Jr. Look at his mama, Alberta Williams King. Look at Daddy King. Look at his sister, Christine. Look at his brother, A.D. Look at Benjamin Mays in Morehouse shaping that brother. Look at Professor Walter Shivers trying to give Martin intellectual, cosmopolitan analysis so he's not just concerned with the chocolate side of town, but he must start there. Because too often we see black folk love everybody but black people. Something wrong with that. Something wrong with that. Yes, we love our white brothers and sisters. They're precious, brown and yellow and red too. But if you're not loving your own mama and granddaddy and daddy, something is wrong. That's Martin Luther King Jr.
The second question to Du Bois, what does honesty do in the face of deception? Because we live now in a world with a corporate media that generates just weapons of mass distraction. The things that really matter, not a lot of dialogue. That's why we don't talk too much about the torturers who have gone free, but we're obsessed with enforcing the law in the hood. We don't talk a whole lot about the Wall Street executives who have committed crimes across the board, insider trading, market manipulation, fraudulent activity, and some of them just engaged in embezzlement, which on the street means just stealing. And not one goes to jail. Our young people see this hypocrisy. They see this mendacity. Martin Luther King said, no, if you're going to talk about law, then the law has to be applied equally across the board. Honesty. Walk in our schools and see too often soul murder enacted for our young people. Militarized zones. You got to go through check-in like you're going to the airport. Then you get into schools and they don't have arts programs, so you can't learn how to play the instrument. We wonder why they don't play like Ohio players who could go skin tight in heaven must be like this. Play the instruments, not just machines. Or let's Clyde Stubblefield get the drummer song for James Brown, not the instrument, not the computer version of drummer song, the real drummer song. And then we wonder why our young people don't have what Martin was always concerned about, which was a militant tenderness and subversive sweetness. That's what he said about Malcolm X when Malcolm died. He said, Malcolm has such a sweet spirit. Let the white mainstream demonize him. If you keep track of the love in Malcolm's heart, and Martin did, you see his sweetness alongside his toughness. And then the radical gentleness. That's exactly right, my dear. Otis Redding say, try a little tenderness, not say my name, say my name, say my name. Our young folk, too unloved, too uncared for, too unattended to. They don't experience the tenderness and sweetness and the gentleness that I experienced in Shiloh Baptist Church under Willie P. Cook. Oh, they don't experience the gentleness that I hear when I hear Ted Mills sing in his falsetto with Blue Magic, or Russell Tompkins Jr. with the stylistics. These are not just entertainers. These are love warriors trying to somehow forge a spiritual fortification. If Martin came back, he would look at America and say, my God, what a land of spiritual malnutrition. What happened to the spirit? What a land of moral constipation. Those who still know what's right, but it doesn't flow. It's too much greed, too much avarice gets in the way. You need a real laxative to get it flowing again. In the social movements, that's the laxative, you see. People straighten up like they listen to Sly Stone. Stand, you've been sitting much too long. There's a permanent crease in your right and wrong stand. There's a cross for you to bear, things to go through if you going anywhere. That's exactly what Martin had on his lips when he got out of that paddy wagon after 4.5 hours of the trip from Atlanta to Tatnall County, to Reedsville Prison in Georgia, in Gut Bucket, Jim Crow, Georgia. And Andy Young and his father were the only two there. It looked like Marvin had a nervous breakdown. He could hardly walk. And all he could say was, this is the cross we must bear for the freedom of our people. That's the love I'm talking about. That's the real thing. That's the willingness to think critically. That's the willingness to speak candidly, unintimidated, unafraid, regardless of who you're talking about, as long as you think you're telling the truth. That's what it is to be true to the voice of David Ruffin from Why Not, Mississippi. When you hear a voice, you hear integrity, you hear decency, you hear vulnerability, you hear taking a risk. We don't have enough folk, we don't have enough black people these days who are still willing to straighten their backs up and tell the truth. Malcolm used to say what? I'm for the truth. I don't care who tells it. I'm for justice. I don't care who's for or against. That's why when you look at the FBI file of June 27th, 1964, you hear a phone call from Martin Luther King Jr.'s people and Malcolm X's people. Because Malcolm, of course, left the nation on March 12th. He shook Martin's hand March the 26th. In that June, he had called for a coming together of all black leaders to take the United States to the United Nations to put the country on trial for the violation of the vicious treatment of black people. The violation of the human rights of black people. Martin Luther King Jr. called up and said, Malcolm, I want to be with you. Oh, if we knew that truth. Oh, if they had been able to come together. All the lies about how they were at each other's throats. Of course they disagreed. Of course Malcolm called him some names that he apologized. That's all right. Martin knew Malcolm had love in him. Malcolm knew that Martin had love in him. Same is true for Fannie Lou. Same is true for Ella Baker. Across the board. Across the board. And people say these days, well, what would Brother Martin say if he looked up? And he saw the 1% who owned 43% of the wealth, and he saw 40% of the poor, children of color, 22% of all children, each one precious in America, living in poverty. He'd have tears in his eyes. Then he'd look around at the politicians and say, what you doing? You got to go beyond being legalized. Not enough tears. That's it. I heard somebody. Because tears shatters your numbness, and it shatters indifference, and it shatters callousness, and allows the compassion to flow so that love is not just something abstract, but is concretely enacted in your life. You all know I've got in a lot of trouble because people don't believe that I have a deep love for President Barack Obama. They say, how can you love the brother and be so hard on him? I say, I love Jamal, I love Letitia, I love Juan, I love Juanita. 28 hours for the last 10 years, every 28 hours, the precious black or brown brother or sister shot by police or vigilante. 28 hours. And you look up, we've got a black secretary of Homeland Security whose job is to make sure every citizen's secure. We've got a black attorney general, job, make sure everybody's safe. Got a black commander-in-chief, black president, whose job is to make sure everybody's safe. But not one federal prosecution of a policeman. Not one. Brother West, don't get personal on the president. I'm not talking about his personal life. I love the brother and his family and his children. I'm a Christian. I pray for him every morning for his safety. But I'm concerned about policy. I'm concerned about choices you're making. I'm concerned about priorities. Don't allow all of our young folk to get so fired up trying somehow to bring power and pressure to bear, but you hardly have one leader who will look up and say, when will the federal government move on protecting our young people? Too many of them getting killed, too many of them murdered. That's a tough one. Oh, that's a tough one. But Martin wouldn't mind. Martin wouldn't mind. Because Martin knew that politicians, no matter what color they are, they can be strong, lukewarm, or weak. Depends on who they are. We saw some strong ones today. We saw some lukewarm ones today. I won't go into it. I love them. I love them. I love them. But it's not just about the individual. It's about the richness of the tradition. This is what Martin would want. The last thing he wants to be is some kind of figure on America's Mount Rushmore site for self-congratulation and self-righteous celebration. That's not Martin Luther King Jr. at all. No, he want to know what's happening in the prisons. Why did it quadruple in the last 30 years? He want to know about the transfer of wealth from poor and working people to the well-to-do. Why is that the banks don't have very little accountability? Even in the debate here with the police versus the protesters, I could hear Martin Luther King Jr. saying, wait a minute. We got to start with the fact that human beings across the board. These young folk getting shot, they're human beings. Police, some of them doing the shooting, most of them not at the moment, they're human beings too. Police, working people. Wouldn't it be nice if the police and the teachers made 1/10 amount of money that bankers make? Oh, you'd have different kind of priorities, y'all. Yeah, they need to have better working conditions. They need to have much, much higher salaries. Teachers too, especially in the inner city. They ought to get triple amount. And we at a point now, of course, where rich kids get taught and poor kids get tested. So it's hard to even generate critical sensibility. Honesty, that's Brother Martin. But he would tell the police, those are precious young folk you're dealing with. You don't violate their dignity. I'm not even talking about their rights. I'm talking about something spiritual, something moral, not just something legal, not just something political. And if you do violate their rights, you go to jail. You go straight to jail. Across the board. It's just a matter of being honest. James Baldwin, one of the great sons of Harlem, used to say, all I want to be is just a writer and an honest man. Well, you see, black folk in general, all we've really wanted is a fair chance. We've got too much death, too much poverty, not enough self-love. All we really want is a fair chance. And all we've ever wanted, as Martin would remind us, is the ability to lift our voices. But that is a serious thing. You see, there's a difference between lifting your voice and lifting your echo. We've taught so many of our young folk these days just to be echoes in order to fit in so well. So they become successful and often forget what they ought to be faithful to. Something bigger than them. That's why the music is so fundamental. Even though so much of the music of our young folk is so thin, it's hard to sustain them in a catastrophe or in a crisis. Wu-Tang Clan is right, cream. Cash does rule everything around me. With the same oligarchs controlling recording, radio, video, and live performance. That's why you don't have the Delphonics or Dramatics, the main ingredient, the whispers, the Jones Girls, the emotions out there. Because that kind of tenderness in the music is empowering, especially in moments like now, where people are beginning to awaken, shatter the sleepwalking, putting a smile on Martin's face from the grave. Lo and behold, these folk are really waking up. But can they sustain it? That's going to be the question. It has so much to do, not just with the quality of leadership, even though I'm very critical of so many of our leaders who tend to, on the one hand, say something in public and on the other hand, in private. In private, not putting too much pressure on. That's what I love about Martin being a Jesus-loving, free black man. Because when you are a Jesus-loving, free black, white, red, or whatever, or like Malcolm, an Allah-loving, free black man, or like James Baldwin, an agnostic, loving, free black man. Freedom doesn't come just for Christians. No, freedom doesn't come just for Christians. No, I do think as a Christian there's a special joy. The joy didn't give me in the world. Joy the world can't take away. I understand that now. But I'm talking about freedom. And my God, in our churches, mega churches, but not a lot of mega courage. Mega churches, not a lot of mega love. Too many pastors, CEO, and not enough allowing their prison ministry to flow. Oh, that's part of the challenge that Martin would see and say. His radical love tied to radical analysis, tied to radical truth-telling and witness-bearing. Third question, what does decency do in the face of insult? These days, to aspire to integrity, honesty, and decency damn near makes you a revolutionary. Because there's so many lies, so much mendacity, so much superficiality, so much conformity and complacency coming at us. But just to be decent and to say that no matter how much you attempt to push me in the gutter, I'm not going to drag you in here so we just reinforce the same thuggery. That's what Brother Martin had to say at the funeral of the 4 girls. Who pulled the trigger, he said. You all remember that speech? See it tonight. It reminded me of Emmett Till's mama when she had to speak looking at her baby in the open coffin. I don't have a minute to hate. I will pursue justice for the rest of my life. Martin King, who pulled the trigger? The governor, the legal system, the economic system, Jim Crow. Then he went to black folk. The black folk who have big cars, big mansions, big positions, but still scared and afraid. Oh, that hit him hard. He was talking about the niggerization of the black middle class. He was talking about those who have unbelievable visibility and power, but when it comes to speaking the truth, they hardly want to say a mumbling word until they check with their agent or their spinster. That's why Curtis Mayfield show up at Martin Luther King Jr.'s rally, and the agent say, "Stay away, Curtis, stay away. Your whole career goes under. We're trying to make you a crossover." He show up with his guitar anyway and go home and write "We a Winner." That's Curtis Mayfield. John Coltrane on the third line of Malcolm X, the third row of Malcolm X. And they say, "Please don't be seen with Malcolm, John. Do you realize he's a hater?" He's a hater. He said, "I want to see what he's up to. I'm about love supreme, you know." When they ask him, "John Coltrane, what do you think about Malcolm X?" He's quite impressive. And listen to my Alabama as I create dark melodies over the speech that Martin Luther King Jr. gave for the 4 girls in Birmingham, or Reverend King on the album Cosmic Music. That's the courage we need, y'all. That's the integrity, the honesty, the decency. Last question, you've been so patient. How does virtue meet brute force? And oh, that's the fundamental question. Because anybody who raises their voices and puts their body on the line to tell the truth about the vicious legacy of white supremacy in America is already a candidate for character assassination or literal assassination. You have to be willing to pay that cost if you're going to tell the truth. It's a fact. And Martin Luther King Jr. comes from a tradition that says, yes, I'm on the love train, but I want you to know that death, where is thy sting? Grave, where is thy victory? I'm not here just to live forever. I want to live a life of integrity, honesty, decency, and a sense of virtue. I know I will fall. I know I will fail. I'll try again, fail better. Try again, fail better. But I'm going to keep on moving on. I'm going to keep on struggling, keep on swinging like Ella Fitzgerald and Muhammad Ali and a whole host of others. And I'm not going to do it just by myself. I'm going to go to Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel on the Jewish side of town because he's a Torah-loving, free Jewish brother. Come on, Brother Heschel. Be with me. Dorothy Day, come on, Vanilla sister. Be with me. We in this together. We all in this together, Brooklyn. Let us never forget our dear brother, linked to a great tradition. Love you, brother. Love you, brother. We need you, brother.
Praise the Lord, everybody. What a mighty speech. Come on, clap your hands for that. As you're leaving, some of us are leaving. Don't forget, we got CDs and DVDs in the back. We got a simple song that says, we made it through the storm. We made it through the rain. We made it through the flood. Anybody, I got any hurricanes? Sandy survivors? Come on, get on your feet. We getting ready to go home. Come on, clap your hands, everybody. Come here, Andre Bird. I need you to sing this for me. Come on, we made it through the storm.
We made it through the storm. We made it through the rain. We made it through the flood, through heartaches and pain. Jesus never left us. Thank God that He kept us. We made it through the storm and the rain. Oh.
Oh, we made it through the storm. Oh, we made it through the storm. So we made it. Yeah. Jesus never left us. Thank God that said Jesus never left us. Said Jesus never. The song says, we shall A flat overcome.
We shall overcome. We shall Whoa, deep, deep in my heart, I do believe, yes, how that we have overcome someday. And we won't be moved someday. you guys. Thank you.